Group work makes the dream work. My name is Valdez, and today I will be discussing the learning environment that is created by utilizing group work and why group work should be used in our classrooms and its benefits to our students. So let's get started. Teaching to the whole student. As discussed in the article, Introduction to How Students Come to Be, Know, and Do, a Case for a Broad View of Learning. A case for a model of learning is made centered around the concept of humanization. It seems so simple, right? But this is a very important aspect of setting up the environment for group work and successful teaching in general. Students are whole humans. They're navigating their own environments, relationships, and the world itself, not just the classroom. In order to make teaching meaningful, we must go beyond the ways of knowing and doing to identify the ways of being a person in the world that emerge and guide human activity. To be effective teachers and set up the correct environment for group work, we have to see each student as a whole person and recognize that they have several aspects to themselves and to their lives. And this is how we can make meaningful connections and set up group work to have meaningful and thought-provoking conversations. So, why group work? The article Student Discourse for Learning discusses the benefits of teaching through dialogue. Through research from a range of countries, 4 beneficial effects were found. Through group work and discussing and debating with peers, students had better initial learning, as in they learned more content. They also had better retention of the content, so it resulted in longer lasting learning. They also managed to learn or apply their knowledge to things that had not been directly taught through their discussion. This is known as far transfer. And lastly, they tended to outscore their peers on tests of reasoning skills, showing higher general intelligence overall. Group work focuses on questioning, articulating, explaining, and reflecting. It gives students the time and the environment to actively participate in thinking and learning as a process. It's far more meaningful and beneficial way to teach, and it's in high contrast to the traditional one-way teaching model. It allows for interaction and an interactive process of learning where you don't just sit stagnant and be told this is the right answer. This results in students actually being able to critically think, work out their own thoughts, and analyze and respond to their peers. Another requirement in a successful group work setting is accountable talk, also outlined in Student Discourse for Learning. This article explains the goal is to have teacher-led but student-owned process of shared reasoning. This will result in students having accountability in what they are saying, resulting in meaningful and respectful conversations. Through accountable talk, students will explain and justify their positions and their truths while listening to those of their peers. This results in meaningful opportunities for learning. The textbook Designing Group Work, Strategies for the Heterogeneous Classroom builds on what makes for successful group work. They go further to discuss 3 key features. The first is delegating authority. This refers to delegating the authority of the task or parts of the task to the student. making them accountable for their work, and allowing them to work out the best way to complete the task. The second key feature is that group members need one another to complete the task. Since they cannot complete the task on their own, they will need to figure out how to get the job done. In order to figure this out successfully, they will need to listen to one another and decide how to accomplish the task. In that way, they almost become a teaching role. A third key feature is the task we give our students. It must require conceptual thinking. We want our students to communicate, so we need to give them something to communicate about. The task itself is very important in that we choose something that allows for meaningful and open conversation and is complex enough for them to have to decide how to take the task on in a meaningful way, but we must also make sure they have all the necessary resources to complete the task. In more simple terms, just think real-world learning. How do you explain things to your family, your coworkers, your kids, your friends? How do you have a discussion in a group setting? What goes on? What emerges? Have you ever been in a work task where you had to figure out what was going on or how to complete something by a deadline? How did you get that done? What did you learn? Did you learn about the task? Did you learn about yourself? Did you learn about others? Did you learn about the world? Do you ever call your friends and family to talk a scenario out? Why? Why do we do that? What do we learn from that? Think of yourself, even though we're teachers, but how have we learned best? How have those around us learned best? Has a certain activity or conversation stuck with you throughout almost your entire lifetime? Why? Why is this the case? What was meaningful about it? If we continue to ask these things of ourselves and those around us, it will be really obvious and a lot easier to set up a successful group work environment. Here, as teachers in a prison setting, we actually have a very special opportunity. It is our goal to not only teach our students a specific topic and meet certain competencies, but really the bigger picture and the goal for all of us is to create more well-rounded students who can critically think and be reintegrated back into society. Our goal, definitely my goal, I hope I'm speaking for all of you, is that after students leave our class, they feel more confident to go into the world as it is today and use the skills of becoming a lifelong learner to navigate the world once they get out. So in order for our students to reintegrate into society, they must be prepared to work collaboratively with others and be able to explain and evaluate. In this way, students will prepare for their role as adult citizens in a democracy through public deliberation and critical analysis of social policies and priorities. Especially in today's world, with as many events and social inequalities that are being experienced, it's even going to be harder for our students once they parole. So it's very important that we give them the skills and the knowledge to go forward and be confident in learning, discussing, researching, evaluating, and managing their relationships with other people going forward. So I hope the group work that we implement in all of our classrooms will be a way to get them one step closer to this goal. Thank you. In the article, Talking to Learn, the Promise and Challenge of Dialogic Teaching, Resnick and Scance discuss some potential challenges to dialogic teaching. This type of teaching, if not done thoughtfully and with constant assessment of dialogue, context, and the mindset of not only the students, but the teacher as well, inequities can actually be reinforced. This happens when people hold the idea that only certain groups or certain people can think and reason at a high level. As the world events of recent, even if these events are no new occurrence, it has come to the forefront in many ways on just how many inequities there are among us. This is particularly apparent in our classrooms, especially as it relates to race. Teaching in a prison where many of our students have faced racial injustices throughout their lives, and in the justice system itself, this can make us particularly vulnerable to identity threat and stereotype threat. This refers to, quote, when an individual perceives that a valued part of themselves, for example, race or gender, could be devalued in a particular setting, such as the classroom, end quote. Many of our students, as incarcerated individuals, may view themselves as a certain way due to previous experiences and society in general. The perpetuation of these inequities can be from the teachers, the students, or both. It is very important that as teachers, we are aware of these and ensure that classroom group talk is meaningful and productive. In order to do this, we need to make sure we are self-reflecting and recognizing our own biases. We need to encourage the same from our students. In addition, we must facilitate a growth mindset in our classroom that encourages the idea that intelligence can grow in any individual. The idea that input and dialogue from all individuals can foster learning. More potential challenges are discussed in the Ethics of Learning-Centered Education, Dynamics that Impede the Process by Hansen and Stevens. There are 4 pairings of challenges that teachers should be aware of and work to overcome. The first is in relation to student expectations. Learned helplessness is a dynamic that can occur when students have been predispositioned to believe they can only learn what the teacher has learned and gone over themselves. This is usually due to the lack of previous dialogic teaching the student has experienced, and the fact that, unfortunately, plain lecture teaching is still the main form used in many schools. This encourages non-active learning and more of memorization rather than understanding and active accountability of learning. The next dynamic in the next environment in student expectations is self-appraisal. This occurs when students can't properly assess their own learning. They view their work as unrealistically high with no room to learn, and if marked low, it's always blamed on poor instruction, which results in the student taking no accountability themselves. This particularly affects group talk, since students who feel above average will be less inclined to seek challenges and be willing to be challenged by others. This ties directly to the next pairings within group dynamics of low tolerance for challenges and social loafing. So just as students who believe they are above average, students who are lower performing can also get easily discouraged by challenging tasks. Social loafing refers to trying to get away with doing the least amount of work. This can refer to getting the teacher or even the group to lower their standards of you, the student, and therefore expecting less overall from you. The next pair of dynamics refer to environmental conditions and our political correctness and consumer attitude. Many teachers and students fear discussing important issues such as gender, race, and politics. However, without addressing these issues that all students and teachers live within, higher learning cannot occur. Consumer attitude refers to schools and educators being seen as simply a service provider rather than an educator. In our case, students receive milestones or time off their sentence and are more interested in that product, the time off, rather than the learning itself. There are also challenges in evaluation. Peer evaluation anxiety is common in the fact that doing a peer evaluation can be seen as judging group members and can be seen as themselves being judged. Also, fixation on the product is an issue. The process at which students come to complete a task should be viewed as equally important. There are many ways to overcome these challenges. It is important as teachers that we assign meaningful tasks and encourage students to take accountability for their work and for their group talk. We need to show sincere belief in our students and place value on the process of learning. We need to encourage honest peer evaluation and feedback and be willing to take feedback ourselves. We need to listen to students and be flexible in what we are assigning and ensure it is important and thought-provoking for our students.